Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. If your family is anything like mine, these higher prices have been making everything more difficult, including prepping. And that's especially true if you've been trying to stockpile different things, because when everything that you buy is $1 or $2 more expensive than it used to be, that can really start to add up. But even though pretty much everything is more expensive, there are still some prepper and survival related items that you can pick up without having to take out a second mortgage. When it comes to food, canned goods are still an economical way to set food aside. You can find fruits, vegetables, and meats for around $1 or $2 per can, but what makes them so valuable is that they're pretty easy to prepare. Some things like canned fruits will taste fine straight out of the can, while canned vegetables, meats, soups, and chili only need to be heated up. And they don't even really have to be heated up, it just makes them taste a little bit better and improves the texture in some cases. Like, I would not want to eat a can of Wolf brand chili at room temperature. But even when you do heat those up, they're still going to require far less fuel than other prepper go-tos like dried beans and rice. And how much fuel you're going to be using is definitely something that you want to keep in mind, because that's going to affect the overall cost of your meals. The cost of propane, particularly the 1-pound bottles, has increased dramatically over the past couple years. If you're depending on propane, it's going to be far more economical to store it in 20-pound or larger cylinders. And you're also going to need to consider where you're going to store that fuel. Some people, you may have a housing situation where you can't store a ton of fuel at one time. Now, you can always get something like a rocket stove that uses natural materials to cook with, but most people are still going to want some sort of camp stove to use, at least during short-term emergencies. Then there's other factors to consider, like, are you going to need water to prepare your food? For most canned goods, you're not going to need to add water, although condensed soups are an exception. Dry beans and rice, along with freeze-dried meals, on the other hand, will require water. So that means that you're going to have to store more water at your home, and also possibly invest in some sort of rainwater harvesting system to make sure that you have enough water to cover all the needs that you'll have. Salt and sugar are some more inexpensive food items, and these are good since they never expire. You could probably get enough of each to last you a year in one trip to the grocery store. But you can also get small amounts of these in condiment packets that you get when you order takeout from a restaurant. Depending on where you go, you could also get other things like pepper, ketchup, mustard, or hot sauce. And these smaller portions are good to keep in things like your bug-out bag. If you want to catch your own food, picking up some fishing gear is probably the most cost-effective way to do that. While rods and reels may be expensive, you can pick up other things like fishing line, lead sinkers, lures, and hooks for not a whole lot of money. If you want to grow your own food, you can still pick up heirloom seed packets for a few dollars each, and for food preservation, canning jars and lids are always good to have around. Another inexpensive item that you could stockpile are paper plates and bowls and plasticware. While I wouldn't store enough of these to last months or years necessarily, they're nice to have around for short-term situations where you lose water. They're also good to have around during times where you're not able to keep up with the dishes like you normally would. Maybe there's an illness making its way around your family, or you're just a little bit busier than usual. Then there's other items you should stockpile since they can help your water storage last longer. Wet wipes and moist towelettes work well to keep you clean when you can't take a real bath or shower, and small packages like this are good to keep in bug-out bags or other kits. Sanitizing wipes, on the other hand, are good to use on surfaces like countertops and door handles. Hand sanitizer can help you keep your hands clean without having to fully wash your hands, although it should be noted that actually washing your hands with soap and water is going to get them cleaner than just using hand sanitizer. And I like to keep small bottles in places like my get-home bag or my bug-out bag, and then keep larger bottles at home. And hygiene is going to be a big concern during emergencies and disasters. These kinds of situations tend to be dirty by their nature, and they'll only become worse when the water stops running. The most obvious hygiene-related items are different kinds of soap, and while most people will stockpile hand soap, don't forget to store plenty of dish soap as well. Dawn, for example, is an excellent general purpose soap, and it can be used for hand washing. While some people who have certain skin conditions like eczema may want to avoid doing that, it should be fine for most people. And remember, Dawn has been used to do things like clean up birds after oil spills, so it is relatively safe to use. Lava soap is also good to have around. It has pumice in it and does an excellent job removing oil and other hard to remove stuff from your skin. But one area that a lot of people overlook is dental hygiene. Stockpiling things like toothbrushes, toothpaste, and floss can help prevent things like cavities, and those could cause big problems in a longer-term disaster. Baking soda can be used as toothpaste in a pinch, and it also has other survival uses like helping treat bug bites. If you use mouthwash, pick up a few larger bottles now and rotate through them, being sure to purchase a new one whenever one runs out. Even if you're careful and exercise good hygiene, you're still probably going to have to deal with illnesses and injuries at some point. But there are several inexpensive items that you can stockpile to help deal with those. Many over-the-counter medications are still relatively cheap. You can get common pain relievers and fever reducers for just a couple of dollars per bottle if you buy the generic versions. While I usually prefer to buy in bulk for most things, medications are something I like to purchase in smaller denominations. It makes it easier to use and rotate through it, so I always have something fresh to use. And also, having a couple of small bottles for me is better than having one big bottle because, say, like something like my allergy medicine, I can have some allergy meds in my backpack, and I can also have some in my medicine cabinet, so I have it with me pretty much wherever I need it. Antiseptics and antibiotic ointments are also pretty cheap. I like to keep isopropyl alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, and povidone iodine in my home because they all have their own uses. And between me and my son being clumsy, it always seems like we're constantly using triple antibiotic ointment for different boo-boos and small injuries. Cotton balls and Q-tips can be used to apply antiseptics or ointments to small wounds, and they also have other uses. I've shown Vaseline and cotton ball fire starter several times on this channel, and Q-tips can be used to clean small crevices on different kinds of equipment. And Vaseline itself is another inexpensive item to have around. In addition to helping start fires, it can also be used to treat dry or chapped skin, and it can be used to lubricate different kinds of equipment. You can also pick up chapstick, which has many of the same uses as Vaseline, and when you run out of it, you can use the tube that it comes in to hold small items. You also want to have a good assortment of different kinds of bandages. While most people do a good job remembering to have Band-Aids, don't forget to store some larger bandages and gauze pads as well. Even something as simple as a skint knee could be a little bit too big for something like a Band-Aid to cover up. But one medical related item that a lot of people don't think of is distilled water. This can be used in things like humidifiers if you or a loved one develop a cough or other respiratory issues. Another thing you should stockpile is different kinds of clothing, and you definitely want to have some spare socks and underwear on hand. While you may be able to get away with, say, wearing the same pair of jeans a couple of days in a row, if you try to do that with socks or underwear, you're probably going to have some issues pretty quickly. Gloves are another inexpensive clothing related item you should stockpile. For cold weather, these military wool glove liners have worked pretty well for me, and they've held up for many years. Work gloves are always good to have because you'll want to protect your hands as much as possible while working. Also, be sure to stockpile things like nitrile gloves for cleaning or medical tasks, along with some thicker kitchen-style gloves if you need something a little more puncture-resistant. Another cheap item that you should stockpile is fire starters. You can find disposable lighters for a couple dollars each, but having longer grill-style lighters for home use is good as well. Ferro rods can be picked up for around $8 on the low end and go up in price from there. If you shop locally, you should be able to pick up some storm-proof matches for around $3 or $4 a box. Candles are another good thing to pick up, and for the best deals, check places like thrift stores, dollar stores, flea markets, and like the clearance section at places like Walmart. The next thing you should stockpile is tools, and these really don't have to cost a whole lot of money. I, for example, have a mixture of some good tools and cheapies. My good tools stay in the house or shop, and they're what I use most often. The cheaper ones serve as backups that I keep in like vehicles or other places. For example, this is a kit that I used to keep in my office to deal with small jobs while I was at work. These aren't the best tools in the world, but they can handle small things okay. And if they were to maybe be misplaced or just walk off on their own, then I wouldn't be out that much money. You can also pick up cheap tools at places like flea markets and garage sales or at stores like Harbor Freight. Also be sure to stockpile some fasteners like nails and screws to help you make any needed repairs. But if you don't have a way to keep a power drill running long term, I would suggest though to go ahead and just focus more on nails and get yourself a good hammer to go with them. Another kind of cheapie that you should stockpile is lights. These could be small flashlights, LED lanterns, or even headlamps. I've lost track track of how many of the Harbor Freight blue lights that I have, and they're cheap enough that you probably could put one in every room of your house. They also work well in car or office kits, and if you have kids, especially small ones, then giving them their own light can make a big difference. For example, my wife picked up this small lantern for our son before a camp out, and he loved running around with it. Giving a kid, especially a little one, something new that's theirs can make a possibly scary situation a lot easier on them. Sewing supplies are another inexpensive item that every prepper should stockpile. Even a small collection of things like thread, pins, and sewing needles could last you a while and allow you to make a lot of repairs. For fabric, you could check places like thrift stores, maybe pick up some old cheap like t-shirts or jeans that you can make patches for repairing your own stuff, and I personally like to keep some of my old clothes on hand specifically for that purpose. Then there's other repair or maintenance related items that you should keep on hand. Duct tape and zip ties are always recommended since they both have a wide range of uses. Also think of anything else that you need to keep equipment running long term. That could be things like cleaning patches, oil, or solvents. Steel wool is very useful for removing rust from tools and other equipment, and it has the added benefit of working as a fire starter. It can also be used to help prevent mice and other rodents from entering into your home. If you have something like a hole maybe on the side of your house and you can stuff some steel wool in there, and as the rodents are trying to chew their way through it, it's really going to wreak havoc on their insides. And once you have the basics taken care of, you may want to pick up some secondary survival gear to help you fill out additional kits. These could be things that you keep in places like your car or you set up for your kids. I did a video recently showing how to turn cheap second-tier survival gear into its own kit, and I'll be sure to link to that at the end of this video. But then there's also some disposable items that you may want to stockpile as well. You don't want to become a hoarder, but having at least a few of these on hand could be helpful in some situations. For example, you may want to save your laundry detergent containers. We use detergent packets in our house, and the tubs that they come in work very well for holding small items like tea light candles. Liquid detergent jugs, especially those with spigots built into them, can work very well for holding water that you intend to use for cleaning tasks. I also like to save a little bit of newspaper. Now, I know that most people aren't getting physical newspapers these days. There's still a lot of like coupon mailers and junk mail ads that are made out of that material. And since it's very flammable, it works well if you want to use it to maybe start charcoal or start a rocket stove. And during cold weather, if maybe the power goes out, you can ball it up and stuff it in something like a jacket, and it'll give you a little bit more insulation. Another disposable item that you may want to hold on to are jars. These have been used for years to hold small things like nails and screws, but you can also use them to hold small parts or soak those small parts in something like a solvent or other cleaning solution. It's also a good idea to hold on to some twisty ties. These, of course, can be used to help make clumps of wires a lot more manageable, but they can also work well to hold other small items together like keys. Of course, these are not the only items that you should be stockpiling. There's a lot more. So if you want to see some of those, then be sure to check out this video, or if you want to see how to make a backup survival kit using stuff that you may already have, then check out this video. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.